Mastering your finances. Today, the show is all about dealing with credit card debt. Well, welcome to the Debt Matters podcast, where we help Canadians find solutions to their debt with licensed insolvency trustees from across Canada. I'm Wayne Kay. Today's show, we're going to talk about mastering your finances, a guide to dealing with credit card debt. And many Canadians have got a lot of credit card debt. Well, how do you know when it's time to get some help? Can you consolidate your credit card debt? How do you go about paying it off sooner? And will the credit card company actually work with you? And are there any other options? This and more coming up today with my guest, Daniel Maximchuk with LC Taylor, licensed insolvency trustee from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Hi there, Daniel.
Hey, Wayne. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me back on.
Oh, a pleasure, especially when we get to talk about fun things like credit card debt. I mean, I wonder what the stats are in our country, but it is extremely high.
It sure is. Yeah, it seems like every month there's a new report coming out that it's at record highs. I know at one point during the pandemic, it was actually decreasing, which was a turnaround from a long-standing trend. But I think that was just because at that time, nobody had anything to spend their money on. Mm-hmm. And since things have opened back up, it's started to climb again. And I think we've reached new highs higher than pre-COVID.
Really? Okay. And it's funny, we're still talking about COVID, but when it comes to insolvencies and financial trouble, unfortunately, we can blame a lot of what we're seeing now on what happened over the last 4 years.
In the big picture, I'd say no, because like I said, it was trending that way prior to COVID. That was a bit of a blip. But then since things have gone back to normal, I mean, it started to climb again, right? The more things are open, the more things are available, the more things there are to charge to your credit card. And, you know, the fact that many people had their income at least temporarily reduced during that time sure didn't help that equation.
Okay. So when do we know things are going sideways when it comes to credit card debt?
Well, I mean, credit cards are meant to be a tool, right? So you get a credit card, it's useful for booking things or paying for things that you're not necessarily in person to hand over cash for, right? Or so that you don't have to carry around a wad of cash with you. But it's not ideal to be used as a long-term form of debt, right? The interest rates are just so high, it's prohibitive to use it as such. So when you really get into trouble with the credit card is when you're not able to repay it, in full within a timely manner. I mean, you might have something come up where, some car repair comes up and some kind of item, a larger purchase that you hadn't necessarily had the cash on hand for, and you might have to put that on a card to make it work for that time, but it should be able to be repaid in a few months following that once it's, to smooth it out. But if it's something that you're constantly carrying a balance month over month for years on end, that's when you're really going to be suffering from the high interest rates, right? And that's when it becomes a problem, and you should really start to look at what you can do to deal with your debt at that time.
It's shocking to me, I don't know why, but it's still shocking to me that credit card companies, big banks, are charging 21, 22, 23% on their money on these credit cards. I mean, I know it's been going that way forever, but I remember, I think at one point we were paying a little bit extra to get a 9% rate. I don't know if they even do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they have different cards with different rates, right? So you might have kind of a more basic card when it comes in terms of points and benefits and that kind of thing that charges the lower interest rate, which is beneficial if you're going to be carrying a balance, right? But if you want, the cards that have the travel points or the car rental insurance or that kind of thing, they come with a higher rate of interest. And I'd say there's two factors that probably play into that. One is that, the bank will charge the interest rate it thinks it can get away with to maximize profits. And second of all is, in the insolvency industry, we see that there is a percentage of the population that defaults on these cards, and the bank effectively loses money on those people. So the interest rates that they charge to the public at large, right, have helped to offset those losses and make it still a profitable product overall.
So in your world, do you see people with more than one credit card maxed before they come see you?
Yes, it's probably more common than not for people to be carrying multiple credit cards when they come in to file a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal. for various reasons, right? They might have maxed out one and have to get another one to carry the expenses while they try and dig their way out of the first card. It's quite common for people to have more than one with significant balances, unfortunately.
Right. So then, I mean, I guess the logical thing is hopefully you maybe have a line of credit so you can move that debt over at a lower interest rate, or do you consolidate? Can you do that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly try to, right? I mean, people, if they're looking at the interest rates and they know the difference between the different interest rates on the credit products that are available to them, will do that. If they have room on a line of credit, use that to pay off a credit card in full so that they're paying the lower rate of interest on a line of credit, right? Usually by the time people are calling us for debt help, usually both are maxed at that point, right? They've run out of room on the line of credit to service the credit card. And meanwhile, the credit card balance is still accumulating, and now they're paying the higher rate of interest on this credit card. And that's when it becomes a real problem. So at that point, unfortunately, people are, largely maxed out, and they're unable to obtain additional credit to consolidate those various credit cards onto one product. Typically a consolidation loan, because a consolidation loan is, in cases where someone has credit products from multiple institutions, if you're going to get a consolidation loan from one institution, what that means is that institution is taking on the risk of all of the different institutions that you currently owe the money to, right? They're writing a check to the other banks. Those other banks are getting off paid in full. And now this new bank issuing the consolidation loan is taking on all of the risk, which of course, we find that they're pretty hesitant to do with respect to, what our clients are telling us. So consolidation loans are usually, obtained by people who have maybe significant equity in a house, and they can kind of get a home equity line of credit or something like that and use that to consolidate the debts. Or, they'd have to have a pretty substantial income for the bank that's taking on that risk to feel very, very confident that the consolidation loan they're issuing is going to be able to be repaid, right? Mm-hmm. And typically, if you have income at that level, you may not have these credit card problems to begin with. So the banks, they like lending money to people who don't necessarily need it because they're sure to be repaid. But those aren't the people who are typically, desperately seeking consolidation loans to try and lower their overall interest rate.
Yeah, so you're going to have to walk me through then. People are listening to the show and they're nodding their heads going, yeah, this is what I'm in. This is the problem I'm having, and I'm maybe being denied for a consolidation loan. Can you walk me through what are the steps to, how do you pay off that credit card debt sooner when you're kind of using it to exist?
Yeah. So, it's a losing battle if your spending is still exceeding your income, right? Then it's only going to get bigger. You can't actually pay off the debts because your balances are growing each month.
So that's number one. Stop that. Stop spending.
Well, sure. Easier said than done, right? But if you are able to stabilize your budget to the point where, your income is at least somewhat exceeding your expenses so that you're able to start to tackle this debt, there's really only two ways to pay off credit card or any debt sooner, right? You either make larger payments so that it gets paid faster. You're paying the same interest rate and more of the payments are going to principal, which is what's paying down the debt. Or you get a lower interest rate, right? If you're able to get a lower interest rate, then even if you're making the same payment, more of that money is going towards the principal, which is paying down the debt. Mm-hmm. So that's when you're going to either need to find a different form of debt that you can use to pay out the credit cards, like the consolidation loans we spoke about which are difficult to obtain in this economy from what I've been hearing from our clients. Or you can work with the bank that you currently have the debt with, because they're already on the hook for that risk, right? They, if you were to file a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal at that point, it's that institution that would be losing the money, as opposed to, a new institution that's considering lending you the money for a consolidation loan. So you can try and work with your existing institution to see, okay, how can I get this interest rate lower so that I can pay it off faster, right? One way is you can call them up and ask, is there any way I can lower the interest rate on this card, at least temporarily, so that I can pay it off sooner, right? And you can see what the bank can do for that. Another way that it's possible to lower your interest rate is if you have one credit card. So as we were saying earlier, some cards with more benefits will have a higher interest rate. You might be able to switch your credit card, with the same account, with the same balance, to a different credit card with the same institution that has a lower interest rate, right? Mm-hmm. So that effectively does the same thing. It lowers your interest rate so that more of your payments are going towards the principal, and it'll get paid off sooner.
Now, I remember that you used to be able to get, I had, I think, two or three different banks that would send me notes saying, hey, transfer your credit card amount that you have on it, your balance, over to us, and you'll pay 0% for 6 months. I guess I used that as a little bit of a strategy. I bounced between a couple of banks every 6 months. I would switch that credit card debt until I had it down to zero. This was a long, long time ago, but it was a bit of a lifesaver. Do they still do that?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. If those are available to you, those are called balance transfer offers, and those are definitely a good tool to use if they're made available to you. So depending on what your card utilization is like and your credit score. As you said, you might get offers from credit card companies saying, if you transfer additional balance to us, we'll only charge you, it'll be 0% for 6 months or a year. There might be a 1 or 2%, one-time transfer charge to do that. But that's going to be a significantly lower amount than what you'd be paying on interest on the card that you're transferring over, right?
Yeah.
The issue with that and why people who come to see us typically don't have that option available is that you, of course, have to have room left on a credit card to be able to transfer one card to another, right? So when you're transferring a balance, it's still subject to the credit limit on your card. So if you're already maxed out, there's not going to be any room to transfer an additional balance to that, right?
Yeah.
But if you do have room left and you're working to pay it down, or say you've been working to pay it down and you built up that room where you have some room on your credit limit on a specific card that you get that offer on, then by all means, that's a good idea to take advantage of that in order to, lower your overall interest rate so that you can then focus your funds on other debts with higher interest rates and dig yourself out of the debt faster.
So as you were talking about that you can contact the bank, would you ever say to them, listen, I'm looking for a lower interest rate. Otherwise, I'm going to go bankrupt, or I'm going to go with a consumer proposal, and you're going to get hardly anything on the money. Do you ever almost like threaten them that they need to kind of play ball with you, or no?
From what our clients tell us in discussion, I don't know if that's the successful approach to take there.
That's why you're on the show. Thank goodness you're here.
mean, if you don't ask, you don't get, I guess. But it may be a case of, you catch more with honey than vinegar, and try to, more appeal to, your history with that bank. You've been a good customer, et cetera. You'd like to continue dealing with them. Is there any way they could help you out with that? Failing that, I mean, if it is something that you're seriously considering bankruptcy or proposal, and you've talked to a trustee or you're considering talking to a trustee, then, I mean, I suppose you could bring up that topic and see if there's any way to do it, right? But the trouble with that is if you haven't been in to talk to a trustee yet and you're not aware of your options, I mean, you might say some things that make yourself sound foolish, and they know that you might not be serious about that because you haven't had that advice from a qualified professional, right? And they might just think you're bluffing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah. I like that, Keith. Yeah. I'm glad I asked it anyway, because as you were talking, I was thinking, well, maybe just, in a very nice way, never ever be aggressive, never win anything with that. But then I'm just hearing you saying there are maybe some other options. So somebody comes to see you, they're so frustrated with all these darn credit cards, and it's so easy now with the bloody tap on my phone. I just got my credit card here, I'm tapping for everything, and all of a sudden I get that credit card bill, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how much did I spend this month? It's crazy. Right? It's very easy to lose track of how much you are spending. So all of a sudden, somebody gets into the financial trouble. They come see you. What are some of the other options available?
Yeah. So if you've explored these things yourself, and most people have by the time they're calling us, right? They've looked at what are my options? Can I consolidate anything on my own? Can I lower my interest rates to the point where I can dig myself out of this myself? And if you've come up empty on those attempts, then the next step is definitely to call a licensed insolvency trustee, right? Those individuals are empowered under federal legislation to offer bankruptcies or consumer proposals, which are a restructuring of your debt more based around what you can afford than what you necessarily owe. So you may have had debt of a certain amount because your circumstances at the time allowed you to carry that much debt, and the banks gladly issued you that credit. But now your circumstances have changed and you can't afford that. So what a consumer proposal would do, or bankruptcy if it came to it, it allows you to, change the terms of those debts to something that you can afford more manageably, get yourself so that you're debt free in a reasonable length of time, and move on with your life and not, be tied down by, the things that happened in the past in your life.
Yeah. Great advice. And the thing is, we want to know, people, do not go contact these major payday loans to try to help you get out of the situation, because you're just going to go way deeper into that barrel of misery. And I could say it, I don't know if you could say it, but please do not do that. Talk to an LIT. This is important to know because it's a free consultation. That first contact is free.
Yeah, exactly right, Wayne. And I mean, that's a good point when you bring up, those alternative lenders. When we've been talking about consolidations and such earlier in the conversation, that was more with respect to your own bank or a major institution or someone you typically deal with, right?
Yeah.
There are other lenders out there who advertise consolidation loans and they have a place in the market, but typically the interest rates on those aren't going to be much better than what you're getting on your credit card already, right? So they're not necessarily going to solve the problem at the rates that they typically offer. So, when you're researching the options out there, make sure that anything you go into is actually going to help you save you money and interest and allow you to recover from the debt faster.
Yeah. Any final words we need to know about before we end the program?
No, I think, as you said, if you ever have any questions or you're ever in doubt as to whether this is in my best interest and I should be doing this or that, definitely consider reaching out to an LIT. As you pointed out, the consultation is free. There's no cost to that. You can speak to a qualified professional, find out your options and what may or may not be in your best interest to do to deal with your debt.
Right on. Daniel Maximchuk, always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you, Wayne. Always a pleasure.
To learn more about that free consultation that we were just talking about, you can check out the website, lctaylor.com. That's where you can schedule a free consultation with LC Taylor Licensed Insolvency Trustees, lctaylor.com. And that's it for today's Debt Matters podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts from. And of course, if you want more information, you could always check out debtmatters.ca. Thanks for listening.